Okay. All right, so today we're going to be talking about the Contax T2. It's going for about like $800 to $1,000 on eBay right now. And if you guys want the really quick, straight answer, I would say probably don't buy this as your first 35mm point and shoot. There's other cheaper point and shoots that maybe might fit your bill a little bit better than $800. You could get an Olympus Mio 2 for like $100 off of eBay. It actually was cheaper, or used to be cheaper, but I think Kendall hyped it up on a talk show one time, so then the price skyrocketed naturally. And now we're looking at like $800 to I think $1,200 on eBay for this camera. If you want the gold edition, it's going to be like $1,500 or $2,000, which are not worth it. I would just get this one or the black one or whatever you can find. I use this camera on almost every single shoot just because I love the focal length, I love the lens, and I like the look of the photos. So to start off, it has a surprisingly sharp 2.8 38mm Carl Zeiss lens that hides itself when you turn it off. You can usually find them in pretty good condition just because of the metal casing. They don't get dented quite often. You can drop this and it's going to be fine. I'd say it nails autofocus pretty much all the time. The only time that I've had trouble is when the subject's like backlit or there's just not enough light in the viewfinder, which you can always use the manual focus to try and account for, but as we'll get into, it's probably not your best bet. Usually 35mm point shoots have limited viewfinders, but the Contax has a really bright viewfinder, which is great to shoot with. Not only that, but the point and shoot lets you have a bit more control over your exposure settings by allowing you to choose the aperture and the front lens dial. There's a normal flash mode, a red eye reduction flash, full auto, which is the same as setting the camera to 2.8, and then it closes all the way down to f16. You can choose to manually focus the lens via the top dial, but I'd suggest just sticking with autofocus as the manual dial is pretty cumbersome and doesn't really move fluidly. The focus system is always using focus lock, so if you half press the shutter, it'll lock your focus wherever the circle is in the viewfinder. This is really nice as you can lock focus and then recompose your image similar to a 35mm SLR. And then the exposure compensation dial is the same as any other camera, along with the standard tripod mount on the bottom, and the top left LCD display shows how many photos you've taken on the roll. If you load film, it'll start at 0:1, but if the LCD display blinks 2 zeros, then you need to reload the film as you didn't do it properly. What I haven't really checked out yet is the self-timer feature, which I think I'm going to try out this summer with like a tripod, since it has a tripod mount. To use the self-timer, you just push the button forward or on, and then focus with the shutter by half pressing, and then once you fully click the shutter, it'll begin the self-timer and give you 10 seconds before it fires. Another thing I haven't tried with this camera is using a tripod at night with low light. It actually has a bulb exposure mode, which will activate if there's not enough light in the frame, which will show up in the viewfinder as LT, and then it'll keep the shutter open for an extended period. You can do like long exposures with this, with trailing lights and stuff like that, if you hook it up to a tripod, and you get kind of the perfect storm in terms of exposure. I really want to try this at night with cityscapes, but it's actually already happened to me before where I just don't have enough light shooting at night. And so I've activated the bulb exposure mode before by accident, and it turns out to have like really cool results. I kind of like the waviness that it gives the photos. Once you get used to using this camera, it's much more fluid, like a 35mm SLR on like aperture priority mode rather than a point and shoot camera. The front dial and being able to change your exposure a little bit more manually rather than just relying on auto exposure is really, really nice. So that's why I'd say if you're rich like Kendall and you can afford the $800, it's definitely worth it. You won't be disappointed. But if you don't want to spend the $800 or you only have like a couple hundred, I would go for like an Olympus, or there's some Minoltas that are really nice as well. I'll leave some links down below to some cameras that I would recommend instead of this. Along with this camera if you guys actually want it. If you guys want to see more photos taken with the Contax T2, you can check out my website or check out my Instagram. It's just @where'sjd. Most of the photos are actually taken on the Contax T2, so that's a great reference if you want to see more examples. And that's about it for the Contax T2. If you guys have any questions, make sure to comment them down below. Thanks for watching.